Dalton Reeves stared at the certified check for $12 million lying on his kitchen table, the same table where he'd eaten beans from a can for the past 3 months. The man in the expensive suit had left it there 20 minutes ago, along with a business card that read, Marcus Chen, CEO, Chemtech Industries. The stranger had spoken with calm certainty, as if 12 million was pocket change. He'd pointed at the cracked linoleum floor and said, "Everything beneath this house, Mr. Reeves. That's what I'm buying." But when Dalton had asked what was down there, Chen had simply smiled and said, "Let's just say your $2,000 investment is about to change both our lives." Now the CEO was gone, and Dalton was alone with more money than he'd seen in his lifetime, wondering why anyone would pay $12 million for dirt. Dalton had bought the abandoned ranch 6 months ago with his final disability check from the Army. The realtor had called it distressed property, a polite way of saying the place was falling apart. The previous owner had died owing back taxes, and the county just wanted it gone. $2,000 for 80 acres in the middle of Nevada desert seemed like a steal, even for land that couldn't grow anything but sagebrush and rattlesnake holes. The house was a disaster. Roof leaked in 4 places, plumbing hadn't worked since the Clinton administration, and the electrical system was held together with prayer and electrical tape. But it was his. After 3 tours in Afghanistan and a roadside bomb that left him with a permanent limp, Dalton craved isolation. He'd planned to fix up the place slowly, maybe raise a few goats, live quiet. That plan lasted exactly 6 months. This morning started like any other. Dalton was welding a patch on the old water tank when he heard the black SUV coming up his dirt road. In 6 months, he'd seen maybe 5 vehicles pass by. This one drove straight to his house and parked like it owned the place. Marcus Chen stepped out wearing a suit that probably cost more than Dalton's truck. He was Asian, maybe 55, with the kind of confidence that came from never hearing the word no. Behind him came a younger woman carrying a briefcase and tablet, taking pictures of everything. "Mr. Reeves? I'm Marcus Chen. I believe you own something that belongs to me." The conversation that followed made no sense. Chen talked about mineral rights, subsurface deposits, and geological surveys. He kept using terms Dalton didn't understand. But one thing was crystal clear. Whatever was underneath his land was worth a fortune. Chen had been polite, but insistent. "This isn't just business, Mr. Reeves. This is national security. What's beneath your property could change America's energy future." Now Dalton sat staring at the check, wondering what he'd stumbled into. Outside, the desert stretched endless in all directions, but apparently the real treasure wasn't in the endless sky above. It was buried somewhere in the dark earth below his feet. Dalton folded the check and slipped it into his shirt pocket. 12 million felt like a trap, and in his experience, traps usually snapped shut when you least expected it. He needed answers before he made any decisions that could change his life forever. The county records office was a 40-minute drive into Carson City. Dalton's pickup truck coughed and wheezed up the mountain highway, past abandoned mines and ghost towns that dotted the Nevada landscape like forgotten scars. The clerk behind the counter was a tired-looking woman named Betty, who'd been filing paperwork since the Reagan era. "I need to see everything about my property," Dalton said, sliding his deed across the counter. "Previous owners, mineral rights, anything you've got." Betty disappeared into a back room that smelled like dust and old paper. When she returned, she carried a thick folder marked with his property's coordinates. "Interesting timing," she said, setting the folder down. "You're the second person asking about this land this week." Dalton's blood chilled. Who else was here? Some corporate lawyer. Expensive suit. Fancy briefcase. Asked a lot of questions about subsurface rights and previous mining claims. Betty lowered her voice. "Between you and me, he seemed real interested in whether you actually owned what's underneath." The folder contained decades of documents. Dalton spread them across a table in the corner, trying to make sense of legal language that seemed designed to confuse. The land had changed hands 7 times in 30 years. Each previous owner had sold quickly, often within months of purchase. One document caught his attention, a geological survey from 2019 commissioned by something called Western Resource Development LLC. The survey mentioned significant lithium carbonate deposits and commercially viable extraction potential. Dalton had heard enough news to know lithium was the key ingredient in electric car batteries. Every tech company in America was scrambling to find domestic sources. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Mr. Reeves, this is Marcus Chen. Have you had time to consider my offer?" "I'm still thinking about it. Dalton said. Perhaps I can help clarify things. Are you familiar with the term eminent domain, Mr. Reeves? The phrase hit Dalton like cold water. He knew exactly what it meant. The government's power to take private property for public use. Are you threatening me? Not at all. I'm simply pointing out that lithium is considered a critical national resource. The Department of Defense has certain authorities when it comes to securing strategic materials. My offer is far more generous than what a federal court would award you. So you're admitting there's lithium under my land? Chen's laugh was soft, almost gentle. Mr. Reeves, you're sitting on the largest unmined lithium deposit in North America. Your little ranch could power every electric vehicle in California for the next decade. The line went dead. Dalton stared at his phone, feeling like the walls were closing in. Through the window, he could see black SUVs parked across the street from the records office. Two men in suits sat inside, watching him through tinted glass. Dalton gathered the documents quickly, his hands shaking slightly as he stuffed papers into the folder. The two men in the SUVs hadn't moved, but their presence felt like a noose tightening around his neck. He thanked Betty and walked toward the exit, trying to appear casual while every instinct screamed at him to run. The moment he stepped outside, both SUVs started their engines. Instead of heading to his truck, Dalton ducked into the coffee shop next door. Through the window, he watched the vehicles reposition themselves with clear sight lines to both exits. These weren't government agents. They moved with the practiced efficiency of private security. Chen wasn't just making offers, he was applying pressure. You look like a man who's had a very bad day. Dalton turned to see a woman in her 30s sitting at a corner table. She had sharp eyes and short black hair, dressed in a simple business suit that looked local rather than corporate. A legal pad covered in handwritten notes sat open in front of her. Elena Vasquez, she said, extending her hand. I'm an attorney here in town. I couldn't help but notice you came out of the records office looking like you'd seen a ghost. Dalton Reeves. He shook her hand, grateful for human contact that didn't feel like a threat. Mind if I ask what you're researching? I've been tracking some unusual real estate activity in this county. Large corporations making aggressive offers to small landowners. Dalton hesitated, then pulled out Chen's business card. Elena's expression darkened immediately. Chemtech Industries, she said. I know that name. They've been pressuring 3 other families this month, offering huge sums for properties that appear worthless on paper. But they're not worthless, are they? Lithium, Elena said simply. Nevada is sitting on some of the world's largest deposits. But here's the interesting part. Chemtech doesn't have the legal right to extract it. They need to actually own the land. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. The families who sold to them? 2 received death threats before they signed. The 3rd had their water well mysteriously contaminated with industrial chemicals. Dalton felt his chest tighten. They can't just take people's land. They can if they make life unbearable enough, or if they can prove the land is needed for national defense. Chemtech has contracts with the Defense Department. They've been lobbying Congress to expand eminent domain laws for critical minerals. Through the window, Dalton saw one of the men from the SUVs talking on a phone. He was pointing directly at the coffee shop. There's something else, Elena continued. I've been investigating Chemtech's extraction methods. They use a process called hydraulic fracturing to break up rock layers and release the lithium. It contamination every water source within a 5-mile radius. What are you saying? I'm saying they're not just after your land. Mr. Reeves, they're planning to destroy the entire valley's ecosystem to get what's underneath it. Dalton's phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Mr. Reeves, this is unfortunate. I see you're consulting with certain unhelpful parties. I'd hoped we could keep this transaction simple and private. Now I'm afraid things might become more complicated than necessary. The voice wasn't Chen this time. It was colder, with no trace of the earlier politeness. Who is this? Someone who doesn't like complications, Mr. Reeves. You have 24 hours to accept our offer. After that, we'll be forced to explore other options. The drive back to the ranch felt like the longest 40 minutes of Dalton's life. Elena had insisted on following him in her Honda Civic, worried about his safety after the threatening phone call. In his rearview mirror, he could see her headlights maintaining a steady distance behind his truck. What he couldn't see were the 2 black SUVs that had been trailing them since they left Carson City. Elena's phone call came through his truck's Bluetooth system just as they reached the turnoff to his property. Dalton, we've got company. 2 vehicles about a quarter mile back. They've been following us since town. I know. What do we do? Keep driving normal. Let's see what they want. Dalton's ranch appeared ahead, looking more isolated than ever in the gathering dusk. His nearest neighbor was 12 miles away, and cell phone service was spotty at best out here. If Chen's people wanted to send a message, this was the perfect place to do it. He parked near the house and waited for Elena. She pulled up beside him, her expression grim as she stepped out of her car. The two SUVs had stopped at the end of his driveway, engines running, making no attempt to hide their presence. Subtle as a brick through a window, Elena muttered. They were halfway to the front door when Dalton's phone rang. Marcus Chen again. Mr. Reeves, I trust you've had time to reconsider my generous offer. Actually, I've been learning some interesting things about your company's business practices. Chen's voice hardened. I'm disappointed to hear you've chosen to complicate matters. Ms. Vasquez has a reputation for interfering in affairs that don't concern her. Elena grabbed Dalton's arm, her eyes wide. Chen knew she was here. They'd been watching, listening, planning. Here's what's going to happen, Chen continued. Tomorrow morning you'll receive revised paperwork. The offer has been reduced to $8 million, reflecting the additional complications you've introduced. And if I refuse? Well, let's consider your position. You're a disabled veteran living alone on remote property. Accidents happen out there. Equipment failures, falls. Sometimes people just disappear. The line went dead. Elena was already dialing her phone. I'm calling the sheriff's department. Don't. Dalton stopped her. Chen's right about one thing. I'm alone out here, and help is 40 minutes away on a good day. Calling the police will just escalate things. So what do you suggest? Before Dalton could answer, they heard the sound of diesel engines starting up. But instead of leaving, the SUVs drove onto his property, parking themselves strategically around his house. Men in dark clothing got out, carrying equipment Dalton couldn't identify in the fading light. Looks like they're setting up camp, Elena whispered. One of the men approached, his hand resting casually on something clipped to his belt. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of military bearing that suggested special forces training. Mr. Reeves, I'm here to ensure your safety during this transition period. Mr. Chen is concerned about your security, given the remote location and the valuable assets involved. Get off my land. The man smiled, but his eyes remained cold. I'm afraid that's not possible. This property is now under protective surveillance pending resolution of ownership transfer. For your own protection, of course. Elena stepped forward. This is illegal detention. You have no authority here. Actually, we do. The man produced an official-looking document. Emergency Mineral Security Authorization, signed by a federal judge this afternoon. This property has been designated critical to national defense. Dalton stared at the paper, recognizing the trap closing around him. Chen hadn't just threatened him. He'd used government connections to make the threat legal. Elena snatched the document from the man's hands, scanning it under the porch light. Her expression shifted from anger to confusion, then to something that looked like hope. This is interesting, she said, pulling out her phone's flashlight to read the fine print. Very interesting. The security contractor stepped closer. Ma'am, I'll need that document back. Of course. But first, let me ask you something. Are you familiar with the Posse Comitatus Act? The man's confident expression flickered. That's not relevant here. Oh, but it is. This authorization allows federal agencies to secure mineral resources, but it specifically prohibits the use of private military contractors on domestic soil. You're not federal agents, are you? Dalton watched the exchange, recognizing Elena's lawyer instincts kicking into high gear. She'd found something. Furthermore, Elena continued, this authorization is signed by Judge Harrison Fleming. I know Judge Fleming personally. He's been in intensive care at Renown Hospital for the past week after a heart attack. Funny how he managed to sign legal documents while unconscious. The contractor's hand moved closer to his radio. Ma'am, I need you to stop interfering with federal operations. There are no federal operations here. This is a fraudulent document being used to facilitate corporate intimidation. Elena turned to Dalton. We need to get this to the FBI. Document fraud, impersonation of federal authority, armed intimidation. Chen's people just handed us enough evidence to shut down their entire operation. The contractor spoke rapidly into his radio, too quietly for them to hear. Within seconds, the other men began loading their equipment back into the SUVs. Elena's phone was already ringing. Sheriff Morrison? It's Elena Vasquez. I need you to send deputies to Dalton Reeves' property immediately. We have armed individuals using fake federal documents to threaten a landowner. The lead contractor approached them one final time. This isn't over. Mr. Chen has significant resources and patience. He will acquire this property one way or another. Tell Mr. Chen that Mr. Reeves has resources too, Elena replied, starting with a legal system that doesn't appreciate corporate bullying. The SUVs departed in a cloud of dust, their taillights disappearing down the dirt road. But Dalton knew Elena was right. This was far from over. How did you know about the judge? He asked. I didn't. Not for certain. But forging federal documents is exactly the kind of mistake arrogant people make when they think they're smarter than everyone else. Elena's phone buzzed with an incoming text. The sheriff's department is sending 2 deputies, but they won't arrive for 30 minutes. Think they'll come back tonight? No. Chen's too smart to risk another confrontation right away. But he'll regroup and try something else. We need to be ready. Elena walked to her car and returned with a laptop bag. I'm staying tonight. We need to research everything we can about Chemtech Industries, their board of directors, their government contracts, and their extraction operations. Dalton looked out at the dark desert stretching beyond his porch. Somewhere beneath the rocky soil lay a fortune in lithium, and apparently, Marcus Chen would use any means necessary to claim it. Elena, why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Because I've seen what happens when corporations think they're above the law. They destroy communities, poison water supplies, and crush anyone who stands in their way. Someone has to fight back. Elena's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard as she dug deeper into Chemtech Industries' corporate structure. The kitchen table was covered with printouts, legal documents, and coffee cups that had grown cold hours ago. Dawn was breaking over the Nevada desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, but neither she nor Dalton had slept. Look at this, Elena said, turning the laptop screen toward him. Chemtech's board of directors includes 3 former Pentagon officials and 2 ex-CIA operatives. This isn't just a mining company, Dalton. It's a corporate intelligence operation. Dalton rubbed his tired eyes and studied the screen. Names, photographs, and biographical information filled the display. Marcus Chen had surrounded himself with people who knew how to operate in the shadows. Here's the interesting part, Elena continued, clicking through several financial documents. Chemtech has received over $200 million in federal contracts over the past 5 years, all classified under national security provisions. What kind of contracts? That's what's scary. The documents are heavily redacted, but what I can piece together suggests they're not just extracting lithium. They're developing some kind of advanced battery technology for military applications. Elena's phone buzzed with an incoming email. Her expression changed as she read it. What now? Dalton asked. My law office. Someone broke in last night, destroyed my files, smashed my computers, took all my research on Chemtech. Elena's voice was tight with controlled anger. They left a note. She held up her phone, showing a photograph of a handwritten message. Stop digging or you'll be buried with what you find. Dalton felt cold fury building in his chest. Chen's not backing down. It gets worse. I just received another email from my investigator in Washington. 3 of the families who sold land to Chemtech have mysteriously moved out of state. No forwarding addresses. Their new properties were purchased by shell companies that trace back to Chemtech subsidiaries. You're saying they're relocating people? I'm saying they're making people disappear from public records. New identities, new locations, complete disconnection from their previous lives. Elena opened another file on her laptop. But I found something Chen doesn't know I have. Before my office was destroyed, I uploaded everything to a secure cloud server, including this. The document she displayed was a geological survey report dated 6 months ago. It showed detailed maps of the entire valley, with Dalton's property marked as the primary extraction site. According to this survey, your land contains approximately 40% of the valley's total lithium reserves. But here's the crucial part. The extraction process they're planning would require massive hydraulic fracturing operations that would contaminate groundwater for 50 miles in every direction. Dalton stared at the technical diagrams showing underground water tables and proposed drilling patterns. They're talking about destroying the entire region's water supply. Every ranch, every town, every well within 50 miles. They're planning to sacrifice an entire ecosystem to extract lithium from military batteries. Elena's phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID and frowned. Unknown number, she answered on speaker. Ms. Vasquez, I'm calling to inform you that your law license is currently under review by the Nevada State Bar Association. Several serious complaints have been filed regarding your professional conduct. Elena's face went white. Who is this? Someone who understands that certain cases are too dangerous for small-town attorneys to handle. I suggest you withdraw from representing Mr. Reeves before your career suffers permanent damage. The line went dead. They can do that? Dalton asked. With the right connections and enough money, they can do anything. Elena closed her laptop with a snap. But they made one mistake. They just proved how desperate they're getting. Dalton walked to the window and looked out at the desert landscape he'd grown to love. 6 months ago, this had seemed like the perfect place to heal from his war wounds and live quietly. Now it felt like the center of a storm that threatened to destroy everything he valued. Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. If you keep helping me, will they destroy your career? Elena was quiet for a long moment. Probably. Chen has connections I can't fight. But if I walk away now, they'll do to other families what they're trying to do to you. That's not your responsibility. Yes, it is. I became a lawyer to protect people who can't protect themselves. If I abandon you now, what's the point of anything I've worked for? Dalton's phone rang. Marcus Chen again, but this time the call was coming from outside. Through the window they could see a single black SUV parked at the end of the driveway. Mr. Reeves, I think it's time we had a face-to-face conversation. I'm outside. No security, no intimidation tactics. Just two businessmen discussing a mutually beneficial arrangement. Dalton looked at Elena, who shook her head vigorously. I'm coming out, Dalton said. Chen stood beside his vehicle, looking more tired than threatening in the morning light. He was alone, as promised, and his expensive suit was wrinkled like he'd been wearing it all night. Mr. Reeves, this situation has gotten out of hand. I want to make you a final offer. I'm listening. $50 million. Cash. Immediate transfer to any account you specify. In exchange, you sign over mineral rights and relocate to a property of your choosing anywhere in the United States. Full security protection for you and anyone you care about. Elena appeared beside Dalton. And if he refuses? Chen's expression hardened. Then this becomes a matter of national security, and private property rights become irrelevant. I have authorization to seize this land under the Defense Production Act. The only question is whether Mr. Reeves walks away rich or walks away with nothing. Show me the authorization, Elena demanded. Chen produced a tablet and displayed an official document bearing federal seals and signatures. Unlike the forged papers from yesterday, this one looked legitimate. Judge Patricia Morrison signed this order 3 hours ago. Federal marshals will arrive tomorrow morning to secure the property. This is your last opportunity to profit from your situation, Mr. Reeves. Dalton studied the document, recognizing the weight of federal power behind it. Chen wasn't bluffing this time. I need time to think. You have until 6 o'clock tonight. After that, the offer expires and the marshals take over. Chen returned to his SUV and drove away, leaving Dalton and Elena standing in the growing heat of the desert morning. $50 million, Elena said quietly. It's not about the money anymore, Dalton replied. It's about what happens to this valley, to the water, to every family who lives here. Dalton, if that federal order is real, we can't fight it. You could lose everything. Maybe. Or maybe there's something Chen doesn't know we know. Elena looked at him questioningly. That survey report you found, it shows more than just the lithium deposits. Did you notice the date on the geological data? Elena pulled out her phone and scrolled through the files. Her eyes widened. The survey was conducted 6 months before you bought the property. Chen knew about the lithium before the land went up for sale. Elena's discovery sent electricity through Dalton's veins. If Chen had known about the lithium deposits before the land sale, everything changed. The county auction, the distressed property listing, even the timing of the previous owner's death, it all suddenly felt orchestrated. We need to get to the county courthouse immediately, Elena said, grabbing her laptop. If Chen manipulated the sale process, his federal seizure order becomes invalid. They drove fast down the mountain highway, Elena making phone calls to contacts in the FBI's white-collar crime division. By the time they reached Carson City, she had arranged an emergency meeting with federal investigators. Agent Sarah Martinez met them at the courthouse steps. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in corporate fraud cases. Elena handed her the geological survey report and explained their findings. This is interesting, Martinez said, studying the documents. We've been investigating Chemtech Industries for suspected bid rigging on Defense Department contracts. This could be the evidence we need. Inside the courthouse, Betty the clerk produced every document related to Dalton's property sale. The paper trail told a damning story. The previous owner, Harold Brennan, had died suddenly of a heart attack just weeks after Chemtech's geological survey was completed. His estate had been rushed into foreclosure by a law firm that Elena discovered was on Chemtech's payroll. They orchestrated the entire sale, Agent Martinez concluded, surveyed the property, waited for the owner to die, then manipulated the estate proceedings to get the land into county auction. Elena's phone rang. Marcus Chen. Ms. Vasquez, I understand you're attempting to interfere with federal proceedings. This is your final warning. Agent Martinez took the phone. Mr. Chen, this is Special Agent Martinez with the FBI. You're under investigation for fraud, conspiracy, and manipulation of federal land acquisition processes. I suggest you contact your attorney immediately. The silence stretched for 10 seconds before Chen hung up. By 5 o'clock that evening, federal marshals had surrounded Chemtech's temporary operations center 20 miles from Dalton's ranch. Agent Martinez called with updates as arrests were made. Chen was taken into custody along with 6 associates. The fake federal seizure order was officially revoked. 3 months later, Dalton stood on his front porch watching the clear desert sky and the bright afternoon light. The legal battle had ended with Chemtech Industries facing federal charges and a $50 million fine. Elena had negotiated a partnership agreement with a legitimate mining company that would extract the lithium using environmentally safe methods, protecting the valley's water supply while providing Dalton with a steady income for life. The $2,000 ranch had indeed changed everything, but not in the way Marcus Chen had planned. Sometimes justice moved slowly, but when it finally arrived, it was worth the wait. Elena joined him on the porch, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She had decided to relocate her law practice to Carson City permanently, specializing in protecting small landowners from corporate intimidation. Any regrets about not taking Chen's $50 million? She asked. Dalton looked out over his land, peaceful and protected under the Nevada sky. Not a single one. Some things are worth more than money. The desert wind whispered through the sagebrush, carrying the promise of quiet days ahead. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable tale where courage meets impossible odds in the American West. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.